Welcome to another episode of Voices. I'm your host, Keston Jones. Visionaries offering information with clarity, expertise, and substance. We are content experts. Let your voice be heard. Welcome to another episode of Voices. I'm your host, Keston Jones. And with me, we have another special guest. We have Miss Aikisha Al-Shabazz. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm great.
Well, thank you for blessing us with your presence today. I mean, I've been trying to get you on the show for a while.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Very busy person, but I thought your narrative, your story, the work that you do is very important to elevate. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Tell me about yourself. Where are you from? Your upbringing.
Okay, anybody who knows me knows that I rep my hood strong.
Okay.
I grew up in South Jamaica, Queens, in 40 projects.
Okay, shout out.
Some people say it's infamous. It's a lot of history to that community. But what most people don't know about that community is that it fostered a sense of love, responsibility, accountability.
Yes.
And it was odd because growing up, most of the people in that community participated in what we call the secondary labor market.
Okay.
Right? They didn't have the regular jobs, right? Many people did, moms and dads, but everybody was a hustler where I came from. I mean, everybody. From grandmothers who were running numbers to people who were selling collard greens out their trucks.
Okay.
Everybody had a stake in the community. And it not only made them look out for their own family, but they looked out for others, right? We couldn't go anywhere as kids because there was someone looking out the window. And if you did something wrong, they were going to tell.
I am familiar.
You know this,
yes,
right?
I'm familiar.
You know this. This is what we're missing now. I think we're missing in the black community because we've got this don't talk to my kid thing.
So what happened? Like that don't talk to my kid thing? Like what do you think happened?
I think the sense of community has been lost and we have become very individualistic. So I think the spirit of the 70s, and I was born in 72.
Okay.
So I'm growing up in the 70s and the 80s, and we still had the spirit of the civil rights movement and that collectivism and us working together and loaning each other things that we needed, right? From food to sugar to appliances to everything. There was
had plenty of notes in my day.
Right? There was nothing you couldn't borrow from somebody next door. And so I don't see that as much. We don't even know our neighbors anymore. Right? And so that community, it made me who I am. It bred me. And it caused me to have a sense of responsibility.
So speaking of this sense of responsibility, you're a powerful woman. I mean, when I say powerful, I mean, I'm in awe of you.
Wow.
I'm in awe of the hats that you wear, and I say that as a man of color who has received or ascended to some semblance of education.
Right.
But one of the things that I realize when I am in these classes and I'm teaching as a professor and I'm doing this work is that I'm surrounded by powerful black sisters.
Right.
And I'm in awe of that because I see the fortitude and the wherewithal to persevere despite the many situations that we come in contact with.
Yes.
So in hearing your story and hearing your powerful mission and the work that you do, I have to applaud you. Definitely. So in terms of the work that you do, you wear a number of hats.
Yes.
And before we talk about these individual hats, like what went into deciding to be this this attorney, this advocate, this YouTube vlogger, and so on and so forth. But what went into that decision to say I want to be educated and I want to go in that path?
It all goes back to my community. It goes back to my upbringing. It goes back to my grandmother. My grandmother who did not get past 3rd grade.
Yes.
But had this worldliness about her. And it was important for her to teach us to pronounce and enunciate, and we didn't get away with saying mother. You know, she would let us. We could do it, but she would check us, make sure we had the ability to do both.
Okay.
Right? And so even when some days I would come from court and I'd stop, she lived in the projects till she died at 97 years old, just 2 years ago. I would stop at court, and if I would fall back into that comfortable, what we call African American vernacular, she would check me still. And I'm 40. You know, I'm a woman of a certain age.
Yes.
But she, you know, she continues to check me, and she is the one who instilled in me the importance of education.
Yes.
And exposing yourself to things that are not like you. She worked at Macy's for a really long time, and my grandmother was very, even though she wasn't educated, she was very sophisticated. And she worked in drapes before they were curtains. This is because it was classic and classy, right?
Yes.
There were no curtains. She worked in drapes. And so that's what instilled on me. She would tell us stories about her interactions with white women who had money and she didn't, and how important it was for you to present yourself in a certain way. She is the driving force. I am because of her. I am because of her. And she had 9 children, and I lived with her. My mother was 17 years old when I was born. My dad was 16. What did they know? So she raised me. She's the one who took me to the city when we couldn't buy, but we window shopped so that I could dream.
So speaking of the driving force, we understand what you were instilled with. However, we have to go out into the real world.
Yes.
And one of the things as parents, as children, for myself growing up, my mother, again, wasn't educated. Well, not again, but she just like, you mentioned, wasn't educated. Right. And, you know, she would tell me to go to school and tell me to do these things, but wasn't aware of what I had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Wasn't aware that when I left her house, the beautiful food that she was cooking and the lovely atmosphere and all that wasn't necessarily what I would be, what would receive me when I come out. So, you know, what tell us a little bit about that journey, and what told you that I'm not going to give up? So
in the beginning, we're talking about my formative years. I went to the local public school. I went to PS 40, and I graduated the salutatorium. Yeah. I was always a smart kid. I just wasn't very interested in what they were teaching. So I went through the motions and I got good grades because my mother would not allow me not to. But it all comes from there. And from that moment when I graduated public school, my mother said, "You're not going to the local middle school," which was IS-8. She sent me all the way across town to 109, which was in Queens Village. And so I had to travel away, and she thought that it would be an opportunity for me to not be pigeonholed into the community schooling that might derail what she saw for me. Gotcha. And so I attest some of that, her effort to get me out of your, what did they call it back then? Your target, not your target school, your zone school. Remember the zone school? Yeah. Well, my zone school was always up the block, right? But when I got to high school, she wouldn't let me go to Andrew Jackson. That was my zone school. The other zone school, because this was heavy busing during this period, was Grover Cleveland High School, all the way in Ridgewood, Queens, which was predominantly white. And so they were trying to integrate that school and make it more diverse. And so a handful of us Queens students took that B-54 bus. Ooh, I remember this. Took that B-54 bus down Metropolitan Avenue every morning, and that gave me a different exposure because now I'm dealing with people who don't look like me and their perceptions of me and my intellect and my abilities. And then at that age, you're not so self-aware. You're just like, this is different. You know, this is different. But you know, because I was in that community, I witnessed much. So outside of what was instilled in me, it was what I was seeing. I had uncles, I had cousins, I still have. You know, when you have a grandmother who has 9 kids, you have a lot of cousins.
You got a lot of cousins.
And they were always at the house. But I witnessed the police officers doing vertical patrols in my buildings, and how they treated us like we didn't matter. You know, how they just, it was hard, and that is one of the driving forces. And anyone who knew me then will say she had always said she wanted to be a lawyer since I was about 10 years old.
So
That was it.
So where did you graduate from for your law degree?
So I went. So the whole. Well, let me just give you the.
Oh,
I know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I got to give you this because I need to let people understand that it's not always a straight road or a straight path.
Yeah.
When I graduated from high school, I went away to Bennett College,
Okay.
HBCU. My aunt was a Delta. She was the first person in our family who graduated. So I was like, I got to do something more than this,
Yeah.
right? Because I got to be a first too. But it didn't work out for me because I was a young kid from the projects in New York, overweight, and a huge chip on my shoulder.
Okay.
And I fought everything that moved down there. I will not, I was a fighter. I went through 3 roommates in 1 semester, and I had to get out. So I had to get out. So I left before they could kick me out.
What were you fighting?
Uh,
And you notice I didn't say who. You notice I didn't say who you were fighting.
Of course, I noticed that.
Gotcha.
I was angry.
Mm.
I was angry.
Yeah.
I was angry. I was very angry. I was angry because I was overweight, and I didn't want to be overweight, but I didn't know how not to be. I was angry because I was away from my family. I was angry because I didn't eat pork, and I was in the South. I was. I mean, my parents were 5%, so I'm in the
Yeah.
South with this little lunch card, and I'm fat, so I want to eat, and
Yeah.
I can't, and I don't have money. It was a lot. There were a myriad of reasons. It was an all-girls school, so I couldn't have other types of outlets.
Absolutely.
There was a lot of reasons, whether they were valid at the time. They were,
They
that
were
was
your
my.
reasons,
They were, they were my reasons. And there was this north-south thing. That's always been a thing when I'm growing up for me. Being from the north, being perceived as you think you're tough.
Yeah.
No, not only do I think I'm tough, I am tough, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna show you how tough I am.
Mm.
And I'm punch you in the face. And so that happened. So I got kicked out. Not to get kicked out. I left before I could. But my GPA was so low, and I'm gonna try to do this really quick. My GPA was so low, I couldn't get into any college,
Yeah.
any 4-year college. So I learned a trade. I learned how to do nails. I took up a trade. I was doing nails for about 2 years, and I decided I needed to go back somehow. BMCC took me in with a 1 something GPS. GPA. And I went there for 1 semester, got my GPA up to a 3.0, and I transferred to John Jay, and I got my bachelor's from John Jay, College of Criminal Justice.
Gotcha.
The one that I had to drop out my last year because I got pregnant and had to get on welfare, and that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But the journey is not always a straight line.
know what,
There are a lot of, and I say that because I know that there are women who are struggling and they can't see the end, because they've been derailed or you've been pulled over here. And I want them to know you can get back on that path and you can finish and you can be successful. I did it, and I'm not special.
Yeah.
I'm not special, not in that regard.
And thank you for sharing that. Thank you for putting that out there for our viewers, because oftentimes, we see the end product
Right.
and don't know what
Right.
you had to go through.
Yeah.
Don't know the journey. And
Yeah.
it happens, especially for kids that look like us.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
I'm just gonna just be personal about it, because in other communities, when that young boy or that young girl goes to college and they mess up, we hear kids will be kids.
Right, right.
That's what all kids do.
Right.
But when we go and get in these situations, they expel us from school. They
Yeah.
kick us out. They give us criminal records.
Yep.
They such and
They
such.
label us.
They label us. And that fight that you have, many of us have that fight, and it stems from systemic issues that we kind of adopt and take in as a result of the systems and the communities that we're in.
Right.
So I'm certainly glad that you're here and you're the shining example that you are today. You mentioned that you're a mother.
I am, before all things.
Before all things.
Before all things.
Ah, man. As
Because they
someone,
chose me. So before all things, I owe them that.
absolutely. And in light of your work, and
Yes.
we'll talk a little bit more about your work, but in light of the type of work that you do, advocate in terms of criminal justice reform, how does that work and what you know of this particular arena affect, or I want to say not affect, but inform you as a parent
Right.
to 2 boys?
Right. So my boys are now 24. When I would say boy, my men, 24 and 16. My youngest is going to get his driver's license tomorrow, his permit. So, you know, it's been a journey. I have always taught my boys that life is about choices because I've learned that in the end, it's about what choice you make. Whatever you're confronted with, it's about that choice. And it has to be contemplative, and you need to be able to reflect, and you need to understand that whatever the choice it is you make, you take the attendant consequence too. And so I tried to give them just that, right? And just be an example. So they could see I would bring work home, whether when I was a prosecutor or as a defense attorney, I would bring work home. My sons, my older son, when he was a teenager, 16, 17, he would be home with his friends, and I would pull out the autopsy photos of people their age. Because you need to see that this is what happens when you don't make the right choice, right? Because I can't just tell them about choices in an abstract. I have to give them the real on what happens when you make the wrong choice. And that choice could be you just picked the wrong friend. You picked the wrong person to ride in a car with. Any of those choices have consequences, and you have to be contemplative about those things. So my kids, I think, have watched me, and a lot of that informs their behavior. They have their own intellectual curiosity. That's one of the things that I've always said to them. You know, my grandmother did that for me when I would say, "What does that mean?" Go look it up. It wasn't that she didn't know. She wanted me to develop my own sense of curiosity and the ability to chase it and not be okay with having read past a word I didn't understand. And so I think that was important for them. And just, you know, they watch. They see the burden and they see the beauty of the work that I do. They see when I am able to snatch a son back and I come home and I got a not guilty on some case, and they see the joy, but they also witness the burden of when I lose and I come home and I cry because it's heavy and it's hard, and some mother doesn't have her son now because I lost. And I internalize it, and you know, so they have a very unique perspective. I'd love to hear what they think, you know?
I mean, maybe, listen, I'm open to having another episode and actually having them come back.
I'll be
so
I'll be
you
scared and afraid
spoke
now.
about dual roles,
Yes.
a prosecutor as well as a defense
Yes.
attorney. In light of that dual role, can you talk a little bit about, you know, I don't know, just the feelings of, you know, on one level, you know, seeing a mother who may have lost her son to somebody who perpetrated this act, and, you know, you having to represent the DA's office, so on and so forth. And then on the other end, like, and knowing that the system, and this is my words, not yours, but the system is corrupt.
Yes. And I'll adopt that. The system is corrupt.
Okay.
And that's the point that I work from. So I'll tell you this story. This happened to me this past summer.
Okay.
I had a murder case in Queens. We were victorious. Client was acquitted on all counts. The young man who was killed was home on college break. It was one of those, you know, one of the good ones. But I had a job to do because this young man said that he had not committed this crime. This young man was 5'6", and the perpetrator had been identified as someone who was 5'11". And I'm thinking those 5 inches matter. It matters. And we're talking a life for a life. Because we may not have the death penalty, but you surely are going away for the rest of your life. So I'm at this golf course after this case is over, and I happened to be with a group. I didn't know these people. They happen to be cops. And one of the cops looks at me. He goes, I know you. And I go, a lot of people know me, right? A lot of people know me. I'm out there, right? So he goes, no, I know you. Let me talk to you. So he pulls me over to the side. Now I was about to get real, right? I'm like, okay. He goes, remember that case you had? And he says the victim's name. And I go, yeah, I remember. He goes, you see that guy over there? That's his father. And in that moment, I was like, every nightmarish experience or thing you can imagine was running through my mind. I wanted to just leave. I wanted to leave not because I was ashamed or embarrassed of the work that I do. I wanted to leave because I didn't want that man to see me and be reminded of the tragedy behind his son, passing and da 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 da. And he said, no, don't leave. He's not like that. And shortly after I hit off the first hole, we were going to the second hole. He came up in his golf course, and I got out the car, and I was in full tears now. I'm a mess. Because this man lost his son. I'm a mother first.
Yeah.
And I couldn't form words. I get emotional now because I hadn't had that experience ever in my life. Yeah. And he got out the golf course, and we stood face to face, and I said, I'm so incredibly sorry for your loss. And he said, I want you to know that I have no ill will I harbor no ill feelings toward you. I know you had a job to do, and you did it well. And he gave me a hug, and we cried. Yeah. It was so powerful. He was so gracious. I didn't even know that I could be that gracious. Yeah. And sometimes the universe shows up to show you things, right? And it was in that moment that I was like, okay, my work is meaningful, and the people who the moms and the dads of the people who are lost, they don't all hate me. Yeah. Some of them understand that this system is so corrupt, right? That the work that I do keeps us from compounding the loss, right? And so instead of us losing 2 young black men, we only lost 1. And so yeah.
Speaking of the work that you do, especially as a mother, in light of your position as an attorney, as an advocate, can you talk about Snatch 'Em Back?
Okay.
The project.
Yes.
And what was the impetus behind this project? And what would you like to see with this project if it reaches its full potential?
I would love for this to be able to facilitate this in a way. I started this project because I was receiving a lot of phone calls from moms. Yeah. The police came here. They're looking for my son, and I don't know what to do. Yeah. It's necessary for us to inform parents because they are the first line of defense against the police. And I say against the police because they are not your friends. They're not. If you watched When They See Us, right, and you saw the interaction between the police and the parents, it's that I want to get in the way of that. Yeah. I want parents to know what they can and cannot do. I want parents to be informed and be aware. You don't have to be an attorney to exercise your child's right to remain silent. He's a minor. You can do that for him, right? But if you don't know that, you don't know to step in, then you will be just intimidated by the system. And you'll sit down and your child will say something that will inculpate him, that might cost him years in prison.
What goes into a parent, what are some of the tactics that law enforcement uses in order for a parent to forego their natural desire to protect their child?
They say things like, you have to bring him in. And you don't question that, especially us as people of color, because we see the police, especially white police, and most of them are, we see them as an authority figure. And it's certainly, and we're such a good people that we tend to think that they mean us well, right? He's not gonna come here and tell me I gotta bring my son if that's not true, or, right? And so they say things like, you gotta bring him in. You gotta bring him in. And they'll say, you gotta sit out there, we're gonna talk to him. And they'll say things like, when we get finished talking to him, we're gonna let him come home. None of that is true.
And he doesn't come home.
They are allowed to lie to you. The law says the police are allowed to lie to you to an extent, right? To an extent, but for our intents and purposes, they're allowed to use a guise or a ruse to get you to hurt yourself, right? And parents, all you have to do is say no. All you have to do is say, no, I'm not gonna bring my son to the precinct. Is he under arrest? Right? And so that I tie up the Snatch 'Em Back with the Am I Free to Leave campaign, because people don't know what to say when they're stopped by the police, right?
Yeah.
And so let me give you a phrase or two. Am I free to leave? There's only 2 ways a cop can answer that, right? You don't have to do a lot of questioning. Just, am I free to leave, right? Not am I under arrest, because you may not be under arrest, but you still may be in custody, right? So that's why you have to know what to say. Am I free to leave? If you're free to leave, go. If you're not, shut up.
I think this is a powerful discussion. I mean, as myself, as someone who's educated, someone who's also from the community, somebody who's a black man, and I will admit it, especially I want to say 2-3 years ago, when it seemed like every time we looked on the news, another black young man was being killed on Facebook or on this or on that.
Right.
And I will tell you, I don't want to say I needed mental health services or
it's
something,
traumatizing.
but it was traumatizing for me.
Yeah.
And as someone who was pulled over by police, you know, a number of times, when that happens, a lot of times the fear
Right.
of what you know, it
goes
goes out
out.
the
It
window
goes
because
right out
you're
the
so
door.
fearful because there's 8 officers surrounding
Right.
your car and they
Right.
have guns out and this and that. A lot of times, having that courage is not there. And I talk to my families and we talk about that often. And this is a weighty subject.
Yeah,
This is a
it
weighty
is.
subject.
It is.
This is a subject that we need more time to discuss.
Yes.
But one of the things that I
I'll
want
come back.
one of the things I want to leave our viewers with is that there's things that we can do to unwind.
Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned that in college you were big, you were overweight.
Yes.
You're not overweight today.
I'm not overweight
I will
today.
say that someone who has, I got glasses on, but I see good without glasses. So, in addition to what you do to
Right.
unwind,
Yes.
what did you do to
Right.
get to where you wanted
Right.
to be?
So I wrote a book about it.
Okay.
It's a book called Black Girl Slim. It's available on Amazon.
Black Girl Slim,
Black
please
Girl
check
Slim.
that out.
Black Girl Slim.
All right.
Which challenges the paradigm and the notion that white girls are slim. Only white girls
Yeah.
can be slim or fit or in tone. Yeah, I stopped eating everything white. I was a size 18 in high school.
Got you.
Right? And I stopped eating everything white. I was good at everything, like a lot of women are. A lot of black women are good at everything they do, school, home, kids, but you can't control what you put in your mouth. And it was up to me as a black woman to confront other black women and say, what your appearance, it says a lot about you. And when you are overweight, people make judgments about you.
Absolutely.
They make judgments about what you can and cannot do, about your effectiveness and your abilities. And I didn't want to be judged like that. I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want people to think that I didn't have self-control, right? Because I was overweight. That's what they think, you know? And so I needed to do something about it. I said I could be good at anything I try. And so I went on a journey, and I decided that I would eat better. I would eat more healthier. I would stop drinking soda, stop drinking juice. I don't even drink juice. I stopped eating sugar. Anything that has sugar in it, I don't want it near me, right? So juice is very heavily laden in sugar. And water became my friend. This is really the only thing that I drink besides tea and coffee every now and then.
Gotcha.
And I literally gave up the starchy, the processed, the fast food. And I traded it in for lean. I don't eat red meat. I haven't eaten red meat in, my son is 24, 25 years. I stick with chicken. I'm trying to give that up just because of the hormones are out of control now. But you know, I stay with the lean chicken or healthy fish, and vegetables really. And then I exercise. And then I went crazy with the exercise, and I became a bodybuilder.
Oh, God, that's another. Listen, like I told you, this woman is my shero. All right, guys. This is an example for all of us, for our community, men and women. I'd like to thank you. Thank you for being a guest on the show today, and we must have you back. And I would love to have an episode with your sons, so they can actually, have a discussion about how does it feel to have a superhero as their mom. But definitely, and I want you guys to check out the YouTube page. Please quickly tell about your page.
Okay, so you can find me on YouTube at Ike Speaks. You can find me, my webpage is IkeSpeaks.net.
Absolutely.
I'm on Twitter, and I'm also on Facebook, and I'm also on, what else is there? Instagram.
Like
He speaks. You can find me.
Listen. The description, all that information will be the description to this video. I'd like to really thank you for really sharing your courage, your strength, your wherewithal, your fortitude,
Anytime.
everything that you've done
My
to
pleasure.
become the hero that you are. And you know, I think that there's a lot of viewers out there, men and women, that can gain a lot from your story. So I'd like to thank you for that. Once again, this has been another episode of Voices. I'm your host, Keston Jones. Please tune in, please share, please like. Peace.
Peace. 2 fingers.